In September of 2015, Volkswagen Group had shocked the automotive business landscape, as the EPA had stated the group had violated the Clean Air Act. It was a complete nightmare for the first few months. Stocks had dropped 30%, management had no idea who to blame, and most importantly, customers were completely left in the dark about what to do next. So why did this happen? Well, in 2006, VW's turbocharged diesel engines, or TDI, began to incorporate a common rail fuel injection system. VW claimed that these engines could achieve stellar fuel economy while at the same time help save polar bears. However, this wasn't the case, but like any other company, VW needed to be appealing to its buyers. They installed software which would detect emissions testing based on driving behavior. So if a car were to be tested, it would display compliant emissions. But in real-life driving, that simply wasn't the case, with cars realistically emitting 40 times over the legal limit. Once news was official, customers were left with a bitter taste in their mouths. Some felt they had been tricked, while others were concerned about the environmental impact. In the end, however, Volkswagen's plans to increase diesel sales and provide an alternative to hybrids was ineffective, with some even stating that Dieselgate had sparked the eventual demise of diesels in North America. Now, VW has offered a few solutions to its customers, which I'll get to at the end. In the meantime, however, VW has changed its software, and you can now purchase a new 2015 2-liter turbocharged diesel in 2017, so 2 years. But let's see how this 2015 TDI Jetta drives. So the first thing you notice is the dual clutch transmission, or DSG, labeled on the gear selector. It's a 6-speed dual clutch automatic, and shifts are instantaneous and fast. The transmission itself is also very smooth, and it always knows what gear it should be in, whether you're driving around town or you're doing spirited driving. Now, this car is also offered in a 6-speed manual, and to be honest, it all depends on your personal preference which one you want. You could choose the dual clutch and you'll probably get better fuel economy. And I've also heard great things about the 6-speed manual as well. I've heard that the shifts are nice and smooth and the clutch is easy to handle. Now, is this DSG as fast as a PDK? Well, of course not, but at that point I think the differences in time are minuscule. It's probably in the tenths of a second. But overall, I have to say positive things about this transmission, and it's super smooth. So how does this car drive? Well, for this segment, I'd say it drives pretty phenomenal. You do have electromechanical speed-sensitive steering, and what that does is it loosens up and it feels softer while you're driving in town, and if you're driving a bit more spirited, then it is a bit more engaging and you get a bit more road feel. Now, this car does offer a 3-spoke steering wheel, and when you hold it at 9 and 3, it just feels great, at least for this segment. I'm not saying this car is by any means a performance car, but for the subcompact segment, I don't think you can get a better sporting car than this, especially at this price. And to top it all off, you can choose to manually change gears with the gear selector knob or put it into sport mode. Okay, so power plant wise, we have a 2-liter inline-4 that's turbocharged, and it's good for about 150 horsepower at 3,500 RPM or so, and 236 foot-pounds of torque at a nice low 1,750 RPM. Now, I could go on about emission scandals, bad software, yada yada yada, but you'll find that overall you do get good fuel economy. I think the car claims to be roughly 30 miles per gallon and 45 on the city. Sorry, 45 on the highway, 30 on the city. And you're probably going to get a little bit lower than that. But the owner who has this car told me that he probably fills up maybe once every 3 weeks. And on top of that, he gets an estimated range of about 600 kilometers. So in the end, it really depends what you want to choose, but overall fuel economy on this car is excellent. Now, the stats that I just mentioned prior really do reflect the nature of this car. In fact, if I start gunning it, tell that you start to lose torque roughly about 4,000 RPM or so. And that's because this car is intended for city driving. Again, it is a turbocharged inline 4. So what that means is you got plenty of torque down low. Again, we have 236 foot-pounds at roughly 1750 RPM. However, the problem is that we only have about 150 horsepower, and you have to really get up into 3,500 RPM or so to achieve it. And that really reflects when you're driving the car on the highway that the car might have to work a bit harder to keep up or maintain speed. So it goes to show it's a great city car. It can go from red light to red light, and it can zoom around, and it can accelerate on the highway. It's maintaining high speeds that are its issue. Now, I'm not saying you're gonna have trouble on the highway, especially here in North America, but if you do plan to drive this thing on the left lane of the Autobahn, then you might struggle a bit, or at least the car will. And one thing that I also really want to mention is that when you're in the city, the DSG transmission coupled with the amount of torque that you have down low, those two options, they really complement each other well. I think this is a phenomenal city driving car, and that's where the car shines. Again, you feel very isolated from the road in this cabin, and everything feels premium in here as well. I find that this is a very, very refined diesel. Stepping inside, the interior is definitely one of the car's strong suits. You get this overall feeling that it feels like an affordable Audi, with everything well put together and quality materials used such as metal and hard plastics. Everything feels great to the touch and is easy to use, but the only gripe I have is the infotainment system. It just feels old and it isn't as intuitive compared to the competition. But then again, at this pricing, some cars don't even have a feature or an option like this. Apart from that, the cloth seats are very comfortable and supportive, and wherever you sit in the car, you'll more than likely have enough legroom. Overall, the car has definitely a sense of refinement inside. In terms of the exterior, it's definitely a step up from the previous generation. With sharp lines at the front that round off nicely to the back, I think it looks well proportioned, and it doesn't really have any ugly sides to it. Now there's a few more things that are worth mentioning, and the first thing is that you have 11.3 inch ventilated disc brakes up at the front, and you have 10.6 solid disc brakes at the rear. And that's really crucial because older Jettas, they actually had drum brakes, so this is a big step up. And we also have independent front and rear suspension. So what do those two things mean? Well, you have a more comfortable ride, and you also have a more confidence-inspiring ride. Now, one car that I have driven in this category is the 2015 Corolla. And if I were to compare the two, I would have to say this. This is more of a driver's car, okay? This also, well, you can see by the 3-spoke steering wheel, the DSG transmission, and you can also see in the cabin layout how it's a little bit more focused towards the driver. Now, there are a few drawbacks though. For instance, the Volkswagen infotainment system, I think the one in Toyotas is easier to use. However, I think that it just drives better overall than a Toyota, and it also feels a bit more better built in terms of the interior. Now, you're probably going to argue that Toyota has a much better reputation, especially in terms of maintenance and customer satisfaction currently. But initial impressions are that this is the better car, especially if you compare pricing. Now, down the line, this might be worth a bit less due to appreciation, but I feel like this is honestly a better car than the 2015 Corolla. Now here in Canada, VW has settled that they will purchase back a 2-liter TDI at how much the car was worth on September 18th, 2015, plus anywhere between $5,000 to $8,000 cash back. If you choose to keep the car, VW will still offer between $5,000 to $8,000 and will make sure the hardware changes by 2018 or so. If you're looking at a new 2015 TDI diesel in 2017, It will come with updated software to meet the recall, and I'm sure you can get a great deal on a car that has not moved in 2 years. If we put VW's ethics aside, I'd highly recommend taking a look at this car.